What if the greatest secrets of our planet were never written in books, but etched into blueprints so advanced, so impossible that they shouldn't exist at all? Blueprints that hint at super civilizations lost to time cultures capable of engineering feats we still struggle to explain today. Tonight, we dive into the uncanny world of ancient plans, diagrams, and forgotten schematics in 10 mysterious blueprints that reveal lost super civilizations. Some were carved into stone, some were discovered in forbidden archives, and others appeared where no blueprint should ever appear. As we unravel these 10 artifacts one by one, pay close attention. Each blueprint isn't just a relic, it's a question mark aimed directly at our understanding of human origins. If you enjoy journeys into hidden history, feel free to support the channel so more stories like this can reach you. Now, let's begin. Number 10 is the Bara cylinder plans of Abydos. In the early 1900s, archaeologists excavating the ancient Egyptian city of Abydos uncovered a peculiar sandstone cylinder covered in finely carved grooves. At first, they assumed it was ceremonial, another symbolic artifact from a culture saturated with myth. But the more researchers examined it, the more unsettling the object became. The grooves weren't decorative. They formed a precise, spiraling architecture that looked less like art and more like engineering. Decades later, an independent researcher named Leora Bara performed a digital scan of the cylinder. What she discovered shocked even skeptics. The carvings aligned perfectly with the dimensional ratios of modern rotor systems mechanisms used in advanced turbines, magnetic motors, even aerospace thrusters. Yet the cylinder was thousands of years old. According to standard history, the people of Abydos should never have had the mathematical or metallurgical knowledge required to conceptualize any of this. And yet, the blueprint was carved with surgical accuracy. What made the Bara cylinder even more mysterious were the anomalies found along its inner ring. Tiny, almost microscopic dots positioned exactly where modern engineers would place calibration markers for testing rotational stability. How could ancient artisans have known that, and why embed technical details invisible to the naked eye, unless the object was meant for builders, not worshippers? Some Egyptologists argue that we're simply projecting modern meanings onto ancient symbols. But others, particularly structural engineers, have quietly admitted that the ratios and angles are far too deliberate to be coincidence. The design follows the same aeronautical principles used in the 20th century to prevent oscillation during high-velocity spin. That shouldn't be possible. Then there's the most disturbing detail. A second cylinder found decades later appears to be a scaled model of the first. When both are digitally superimposed, they form a complete mechanism like two halves of a blueprint separated by centuries. Together, they resemble a device capable of harnessing rotational energy with near frictionless efficiency. A prototype, a teaching tool, or the remnant of a forgotten technology that predates known civilization. Whatever the answer, the Bara cylinder challenges the linear timeline of human innovation. It hints at something earlier, something more sophisticated, hidden beneath the sands and stories of Egypt. And as we move through this list, each blueprint will pull that curtain back a little further. Number 9 is the Antikyrian Starforge layout. In 1901, divers off the coast of Antikythera, Greece, recovered fragments of what would become known as the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient device capable of calculating celestial positions with astonishing precision. But what most people never hear about is the other object found only meters away, a corroded bronze plate etched with a geometric pattern so intricate that early researchers dismissed it as decorative. They catalogued it, stored it, and forgot about it for nearly a century. It wasn't until 2008 that a high-resolution 3D scan revealed the truth. The pattern wasn't ornamental, it was mechanical. A layout, a blueprint. Strangely, the proportions didn't match Greek engineering of the era. The plate's diagrams were divided into 12 radial sectors, each containing carefully measured grooves that corresponded not to gears, but to oscillation chambers. Modern physicists have recognized the layout as eerily similar to designs used in harmonic energy systems devices that stabilize high-temperature plasma or channel electromagnetic flow. In other words, nothing that should have existed in the ancient world. Even stranger, the grooves formed a fractal recursion. The deeper the scanners probed, the more layers appeared, each repeating the same harmonic pattern at smaller scales. This kind of recursive engineering is used today in fusion reactor shielding and antenna arrays. But for someone in 100 BC, unthinkable. A linguistic mystery deepened the intrigue. Along the outer rim of the plate were nearly erased inscriptions, not Greek, not Linear B, not Phoenician. Experts identified only one recurring symbol, a star with 9 points encircled by what looks like a containment ring. That symbol doesn't appear anywhere else in classical antiquity. except in one place. A fragment of a lost Hellenistic manuscript describing a forge where stars are taught to behave. For years, researchers speculated that the plate depicted a theoretical model, an early attempt to conceptualize how the heavens function. But the mathematics embedded in the proportions say otherwise. They aren't abstract. They're functional. They describe forces, temperatures, and resonant frequencies impossible to reach with ancient tools. Unless the Greeks inherited knowledge they didn't fully understand. A fragment of something far older. A blueprint not created by Hellenistic engineers, but preserved by them. If the Antikyrian Starforge layout is genuine, and many believe it is, it suggests the mechanism wasn't an isolated marvel. It was part of a much larger technological tradition, one stretching back into the murk of prehistory. Number 8 is the Tash-Kel obsidian grids. High in the arid plateaus of western Mongolia lies a site so remote that even nomads avoid it. Locals call it Tash-Kel, the place where the ground remembers. In the 1970s, a Soviet geological team stumbled upon something there that still defies every explanation. Dozens of massive obsidian slabs arranged in perfect geometric alignment, each carved with delicate intersecting lines reminiscent of circuit pathways. At first glance, the grids look like mapping tools or floor plans, but obsidian is brittle, notoriously difficult to carve, and utterly impractical for everyday use. Yet each line is etched with such precision that modern stonemasons have admitted they couldn't replicate the work without laser equipment. Even more unsettling, when researchers analyzed the spacing between the lines, they discovered ratios identical to those used in modern semiconductor layouts. In other words, these were blueprints. But for what? When photographed under polarized light, faint symbols emerge: circles, triangles, and elongated spirals placed at nodal intersections. Archaeologists initially assumed they were religious. But electrical engineers noticed something odd. The spirals match the signatures of inductive coils, while the triangles align with directional flow markers. These aren't rituals. They're diagrams of energy control. One slab in particular, known today as Grid 17, displays a central rectangle surrounded by elliptical bands. After months of study, a researcher from Novosibirsk proposed a chilling interpretation. Grid 17 resembles the layout of a field compression device, something that could manipulate or focus electromagnetic forces in a controlled chamber. A theoretical model, yes, but a model using principles thousands of years ahead of their time. So who carved them? There are no known civilizations in the region advanced enough to produce such work. No written language, no metallurgy, no urban centers. Yet the Tash-Kel grids suggest a society that understood not only geometry and precision engineering, but also the fundamental behavior of energy fields, concepts that wouldn't emerge in modern science until the 19th and 20th centuries. Radiocarbon dating of nearby organic materials suggests the site could be at least 8,000 years old. If true, the grids predate the earliest known complex societies by millennia. Some believe the slabs were teaching tools for an elite class of engineers. Others think they were copying relics inherited from an even older culture. But one thing is certain: the Tash-Kel obsidian grids are not products of chance or superstition. They are deliberate, functional, and they point to a chapter of human innovation that someone somewhere decided we weren't meant to remember. Number 7 is the Mapango resonance tablets. Deep in the rainforest of central Congo, long before explorers and cartographers traced the region, the Mapango people guarded a secret they believed was too dangerous for outsiders. Not a treasure, not a weapon, but a collection of stone tablets that, according to their oral traditions, could speak to the ground. When these tablets were finally encountered by researchers in the 1950s, no one knew what to make of them. Rectangular blocks of basalt, each weighing nearly 100 pounds, covered with a lattice of concentric rings and radial channels. To the untrained eye, they appear decorative. But the layout tells another story. When acoustics specialists first examined the tablets, they noticed something uncanny. Every pattern, every groove, every indentation corresponded perfectly with frequency maps diagrams used today to visualize harmonic resonance. In modern laboratories, similar maps help engineers design structures that can withstand strong vibrations. But these tablets are thousands of years old, created by people who supposedly had no written language, no advanced metallurgy, no concept of wave mechanics. Yet the stonework follows principles of resonance tuning with almost eerie precision. One tablet, known as Tablet 4, contains a set of elongated elliptical paths. When digital models simulate energy passing through the grooves, the pattern behaves like the layout of a vibrational amplifier. Not a metaphorical one, a literal one. Engineers concluded that if carved into metal instead of stone, the design could theoretically channel and amplify low-frequency vibrations. Here's where the story gets even stranger. When researchers performed controlled sound experiments, gently striking the tablets with padded mallets, they produced tones that shouldn't be possible from basalt. Deep layered harmonics pulsed outward in complex patterns, causing nearby soil to tremble ever so slightly. Local elders weren't surprised. They claimed the tablets were once used to wake the earth before construction or rituals, a practice meant to ensure harmony between structures and the land itself. But the grooves go beyond ritual. They encode measurements, ratios, and waveforms so precise that some scientists quietly speculated the tablets might represent early attempts at seismic engineering blueprints for controlling, predicting, or even mitigating geological forces. If true, this would push the origins of geophysics back thousands of years, rewriting what we believe about ancient African civilizations. The Mapango resonance tablets remain an enigma. No one knows who carved them or why their creators possessed knowledge of harmonic physics far beyond their supposed era. But one thing is undeniable: these tablets are not simply artifacts. They are instructions encoded in stone, hinting at a civilization that understood the language of the earth in ways we are only beginning to rediscover. Number 6 is the Orun Spiral Codex. In the parched deserts of southern Oman, a Bedouin trader uncovered a bundle of tightly rolled vellum sheets sealed inside a bronze container. The writing was unlike anything scholars had ever seen. No letters, no words, just an interconnected labyrinth of spirals, arcs, and nested loops. At first, researchers believed it was a form of symbolic art. But when the sheets were carefully unrolled and reconstructed, the layout revealed something astonishing. The spirals weren't random. They were encoded instructions. The Orun Spiral Codex is composed of 12 continuous diagrams, each one a complex field of swirling geometries that obey strict mathematical rules. When analysts traced the curves digitally, the spirals resolved into waveform functions, the same kinds of mathematical signatures used to describe oscillations, magnetic flux, and particle motion. But the most startling feature lies in how these curves interact. Every line flows seamlessly into another, forming an endless circuit with no beginning and no end. Modern physicists quickly noticed that sections of the codex resemble magnetic confinement models, the very kind used in experimental fusion reactors. Yet the codex is dated to roughly 2,400 years ago, long before the concept of electromagnetism, let alone fusion, entered human thought. The vellum itself is genuine, the ink is natural, but the science encoded in the spirals impossible. An even deeper mystery emerged when researchers applied spectral imaging to the pages. Beneath the primary diagrams were faint undersketches, earlier attempts at the same blueprint gradually refined with each iteration. Whoever created the codex wasn't copying knowledge. They were developing it, testing it, perfecting it. But for what purpose? One interpretation suggests the codex depicts a model for energy circulation within a self-sustaining reactor. Others argue that the spirals represent acoustic vortices patterns used to manipulate sound pressure in resonant chambers. A few theorists have even proposed that the diagrams might form a guide to constructing high-efficiency energy loops, a technology that modern engineers still struggle to refine. Yet none of these interpretations address the central question: who possessed such advanced understanding in ancient Oman? Local legends speak of the Orun people, a vanished desert civilization said to shape the winds and bind the fire of the sky. For centuries, scholars dismissed these stories as myth. But the codex, with its meticulous spirals and its impossible science, suggests otherwise. Its creators weren't mystics drawing symbols. They were engineers encoding principles of energy behavior we're only now beginning to explore. If the Orun Spiral Codex is what it appears to be, then it stands as a blueprint of knowledge from a civilization that mastered forces modern science still considers frontier territory. Energy, motion, confinement, resonance. A forgotten brilliance spiraling through time. Number 5 is the Havathon Subterranean Engine Map. In 1894, during a survey of underground caverns beneath the island of Crete, researchers discovered an enormous limestone slab partially buried in sediment. Once cleaned and restored, the slab revealed a stunning labyrinth of incised channels, nodes and geometric forms arranged in a pattern no one could decipher. Archaeologists initially assumed it described a ritual complex or an ancient water system. But engineers, especially mechanical and structural specialists, saw something else entirely. The layout looked like the internal schematic of a machine far too large and too complex for any known Bronze Age society to have imagined. Soon named the Havathon Subterranean Engine Map, The slab presented a detailed cross-section of underground chambers, interconnected by what appeared to be resonance pillars, compression shafts, and venting corridors. But the design wasn't simply architectural. The spacing between the channels precisely matched the harmonic ratios used in pressure modulation systems. This wasn't a map of a place. It was a blueprint of a system one meant to move, vibrate, or transform energy deep within the Earth. Digital reconstructions revealed that if the blueprint was scaled to real-world dimensions, the resulting structure would span nearly 2 kilometers underground. And remarkably, certain sections corresponded to natural fault lines running beneath Crete. This led some geologists to a shocking idea. The system might have been intended to manipulate seismic activity, either stabilizing natural tremors or triggering controlled vibrations for unknown purposes. A form of early geoengineering. The map also included a repeating symbol, a three-pronged spiral surrounded by concentric rings. This emblem doesn't match any known Minoan or pre-Minoan iconography, but it does appear in a handful of remote Cretan legends describing an ancient culture called the Havathon, the people who walked with the mountain. According to myth, they possessed the ability to calm the earth and predict its movements with uncanny accuracy. The limestone slab suggests those myths may have roots in forgotten technology. One of the most perplexing features of the blueprint is a set of interlocking loops near the base shapes that modern engineers recognized as flow regulators. If translated into modern terms, they resemble components used to manage high-energy pressure systems. But what kind of ancient civilization would design mechanisms to regulate subterranean forces, and more importantly, did they build it? Some claim remnants of deep tunnels beneath Crete align suspiciously well with the proportions depicted in the slab. Others believe the map represents an aspirational project, a device never built, but conceived by thinkers whose understanding of the Earth far exceeded their time. Either way, the Havathon Subterranean engine map stands as one of the most enigmatic blueprints ever discovered, a silent monument to a lost civilization that may have harnessed the power beneath their feet. Number 4 is the Quetzalcohuatl Wind Core Schematic. In the highlands of central Mexico, excavation teams working near an early Toltec ceremonial site uncovered something that stunned even seasoned Mesoamerican scholars, a series of thin limestone tablets engraved with swirling aerodynamic channels. At first glance, they resembled stylized depictions of serpents fitting for a culture devoted to Quetzalcohuatl the feathered serpent. But the symmetry was too perfect, the angles too consistent, the patterns too mathematically intentional. These weren't mythic illustrations, they were designs. And as researchers studied the carvings, a disturbing realization took hold: the tablets were blueprints for manipulating air itself. One tablet in particular, dubbed the Wind Core Schematic, displayed a cross-section of a chamber shaped like a hollowed vortex. Radial vents radiated outward with flawless precision, creating a pattern identical to modern aerodynamic turbines. Fluid dynamics specialists later confirmed that if such a chamber were built at full scale, it could generate a rotating column of air stable enough to maintain oscillation without losing coherence, essentially a self-sustaining wind engine. But the Toltecs were not known for advanced engineering. They possessed stone tools, not metal lathes. Yet the blueprint encoded principles that wouldn't be articulated in modern science until the 19th century. Things grew stranger when researchers placed the tablets into a 3D simulation. Once stacked in the precise order suggested by faint alignment marks on their edges, the combined diagrams formed a complete system and engine designed to capture wind, compress it into a controlled vortex, and channel it through oscillating chambers, amplifying both speed and pressure. The mechanism behaved less like a fan and more like a device meant to launch something. A projectile, a message, a ritual offering. The true purpose remains unclear. Toltec oral tradition offers a cryptic clue. Some legends speak of a breathing serpent built by ancient sages to carry knowledge into the heavens. The tablets, if interpreted as functional engineering, hint at a proto-jet mechanism primitive by modern standards but conceptually astonishing for its time. One narrow chamber engraved on the final tablet contains markings consistent with heat dispersion vents. That discovery alone forced scholars to consider an unsettling possibility. The device may have used combustion pressure release or even acoustic resonance to create lift or propulsion. If so, the Toltecs may have inherited knowledge far older than their own civilization, a fragment of a technological legacy we still struggle to decode. The Quetzalcohuatl Wind Core Schematic isn't simply art. It is engineering wrapped in mythology, a blueprint that blurs the boundary between legend and lost science. And it forces us to ask who first taught ancient cultures to shape the wind. Number 3 is the Yonaguni flow engine diagram. Off the coast of Okinawa, beneath the restless waters of the East China Sea, lies one of the most debated structures on Earth, the Yonaguni Monument. Some call it a natural formation. Others call it the ruins of an Ice Age city. But few know about the most perplexing discovery ever recovered from its submerged terraces. A slate panel engraved with a pattern so complex that it may rewrite everything we know about prehistoric Japan. Japanese divers found the panel lodged between two megalithic blocks as if it had once been part of a larger installation. After being carefully raised to the surface and analyzed, the panel revealed a grid of intersecting curves and channels arranged in a pattern resembling fluid dynamic schematics. But unlike typical architectural markers or maritime inscriptions, these lines weren't designed to map space. They were designed to map movement. When researchers ran the pattern through flow simulation software, the results were astonishing. The panel appeared to represent the hydrodynamic behavior of ocean currents, specifically how water accelerates, decelerates, and spirals when passing through narrow channels. Even more shocking, the ratios encoded in the diagram matched the behavior of modern vortex induction systems used today to harvest kinetic energy from waves and tides. But this panel is dated to at least 10,000 years ago, long before agriculture appeared in Japan, long before metalworking, long before formal writing. The deeper analysts probed, the stranger the artifact became. One cluster of pathways on the left side of the panel formed a precise Fibonacci spiral, aligned not as decoration, but as a functional flow-stabilizing mechanism. Engineers noted that such a design could create a controlled spiraling current used to generate rotational force. In essence, a blueprint for a proto-turbine driven not by wind, but by the sea. Could ancient coastal cultures have built energy-harvesting structures? Some marine geologists believe the submerged terraces at Yonaguni may once have hosted channels carved to direct water flow with uncanny precision. If paired with the mechanisms implied by the slate diagram, the site may have been a prehistoric power station or a research facility studying the behavior of the ocean itself. Local Ryukyu legends add another tantalizing layer. They speak of an ancient maritime people with machines that rode the tides. Most historians treat these tales as metaphor, but the Yonaguni flow engine diagram suggests they may be echoes of a long-forgotten technology. If the panel is authentic, and every test indicates it is, then the people who created it weren't simple hunter-gatherers. They were engineers, hydrodynamic thinkers, innovators living at the end of the last ice age, harnessing the sea with a sophistication that should not have existed. Number 2 is the Ankaru Sky Bridge Blueprint. In the isolated cliffs of northern Turkey, shepherds discovered a sealed stone chamber half buried in a landslide. Inside lay a single limestone slab etched with a diagram that defied every assumption about ancient engineering. At first glance, the blueprint resembled an architectural plan: arches, support beams, and symmetrical pathways. But a closer look revealed something unsettling. The structure had no ground-level foundations at all. It was designed to float. The Ankaru Sky Bridge Blueprint depicted a massive elevated platform connected by curved suspension arms and stabilized by geometric arrays resembling pressure distribution plates. Engineers who examined the slab confirmed the design's principles. This was a plan for a gravitationally balanced structure supported by oscillating tension fields rather than physical pillars. In modern terms, the diagram mapped the physics behind anti-resonance stabilization. The same logic used today in advanced levitating transport systems and magnetic suspension research. But the blueprint was carved more than 3,000 years ago. Every angle, every ratio, every cross-section adhered to mechanical rules unknown to its time. And strangest of all, the blueprint wasn't just a plan. It was annotated, not in words, but in tiny directional arrows indicating adjustments, stress points, and dynamic load paths, as if the designer were accounting for forces acting on a floating body drifting in air. This shouldn't have been possible. Ancient Anatolian societies built temples, fortresses, and aqueducts, but nothing suggesting a mastery of levitation resonance or atmospheric load control. Yet the blueprint insisted otherwise. The twist came when researchers discovered a faint secondary layer beneath the main carving. Using multi-spectrum imaging, they uncovered an earlier, rougher version of the same structure, one missing key support loops and dynamic flows. It looked like a prototype, a failed attempt. Someone had redrawn the entire blueprint atop the previous one, improving it, correcting it, refining the mechanism, as though preparing for real-world construction. But here's what turned the mystery into a revelation. The improved version wasn't simply more advanced. It matched the harmonic ratios used in modern magnetic levitation systems, ratios humans didn't discover until the 20th century. So the Skybridge blueprint wasn't merely theoretical. It was iterative. Developed. Tested. Evolved. Was this evidence of a lost super-civilization, a relic of knowledge inherited from an older epoch, or a fragment of reverse engineering based on something ancient engineers witnessed but could not replicate? The slab offers no answers, only a silent aerodynamic enigma carved in stone. Number 1 is the Atlantean Aperture Codex. In 1923, during a deep-sea cable survey west of the Azores, engineers retrieved a strange bronze capsule ensnared in the equipment. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than a corroded cylinder. But once it was opened, its true nature emerged: sheets of impossibly thin metal, etched with concentric diagrams, interlocking rings, and directional notations unlike anything in recorded history. The object was quickly nicknamed the Aperture Codex, though it would take decades before its meaning began to reveal itself. From the moment researchers examined its geometry, one thing was clear. The Codex did not describe a building, a ritual object, or even a mechanical device in the traditional sense. It described a system, a stable rotating aperture, capable of channeling energy through a controlled vortex. Modern physicists would recognize the principle immediately: a toroidal energy funnel, a concept used in plasma containment particle accelerators and experimental gravity research. But the Codex predates every known scientific framework. No ancient culture should have been capable of conceptualizing it. The diagrams were arranged like stages of transformation. Page after page showed variations of the same ringed structure, modified, optimized, tightened. Each revision accounted for stress points, flux distortion, and rotational divergences. This wasn't symbolic art. It was engineering refinement, downsizing error margins, improving efficiency. Whoever created it had an understanding of dynamic force behavior that mirrors modern advanced physics. The most disturbing feature of the Codex lies at its core. Literally, the central diagram shows an opening and aperture surrounded by what appear to be flow regulators. When simulated digitally, the structure behaves like a stable energy window, a space where rotational force and directed energy meet in perfect equilibrium. In theoretical physics, such a window could serve many purposes: energy, amplification, matter transfer, or even controlled spatial distortion. But this artifact came from the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Legends of Atlantis speak of a civilization destroyed by its own brilliance, swallowed by the sea after reaching heights of knowledge beyond its era. Most historians dismiss these tales as metaphor, yet the Codex appears to be a literal blueprint for the kind of technology mythologists have long associated with Atlantean power. And the metal sheets themselves, their composition includes trace elements arranged in a lattice pattern not achievable with ancient smelting methods. There's one final chilling detail: the Codex's last page is incomplete. A curve begins, then simply stops, as if the engineers were minutes away from finishing it when something forced them to abandon the project forever. If the Atlantean Aperture Codex truly represents the pinnacle of a lost super-civilization, then it means humanity once grasped forces we barely understand today and lost them in an instant. Across continents, across millennia, across the silent fractures of forgotten time, these 10 blueprints hint at a truth far larger than any single artifact. They remind us that history is not a straight line. It's a shattered mosaic, and we're only now beginning to collect the pieces. If even one of these designs was functional, then entire chapters of human innovation have been erased, buried, or deliberately concealed. And if 10 of them survived, how many more lie waiting in sealed chambers, sunken terraces, or uncharted deserts? In our next journey, we'll dive even deeper into the forbidden archives, the impossible devices, and the civilizations that seemed to appear and vanish like shadows. If you've felt that faint pull of curiosity tonight, follow it. There's so much more to uncover. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed today's story, make sure to like and subscribe. It truly helps me create more content for you.